This is my story, the real one. Not a cleaned up version, not a highlight reel, but the actual story of how my marriage died, how God broke me completely, what he asked of me before he would bring any of it back. And that he did. I stand on righteousness, not cultural norms, not cultural expectations, and not churchy norms and churchy expectations. I not only gave up on my marriage, but I was so disappointed that God had not shown up for me that I gave up on him. That is the devil's absolute MO, is to bring us to a place of apostasy. I found out that he had an emotional affair with this woman that he met on the dance floor, that he was done accepting my scraps, and that it was over. Natasha, I don't love you, and I haven't loved you in a really long time. And I have spent the last year destroying every little bit of love I've ever had for you. But I can't see my life without the boys. And if you're okay with it, I want to get back together, and I hope to one day love you again. Wise wife does not mean just submitting in all things, being a perfect little Stepford wife, never questioning anything. To be a truly wise wife means that you are the perfect helper for your husband, no matter what state he's in. This is part one of a 3-part series where I'm sharing my full story of marriage breakdown to restoration, and a lot of nitty-gritty details in between. So if you're new here, start here. And if you've been around for a while, I think you're going to hear some things in this one that you have not heard me say before. Okay, I want to start this episode with a confession. There was a time in my marriage where I hated my husband. Not the I hate the way you drive or I hate the sound you make when you chew kind of hate, but the kind where I would literally lie awake at night and honestly wonder if I had married my mortal enemy. And here's actually the part that's even harder to say. I thought I was the good one. I went to church. I read devotionals. I said the right things to the right people. I was the spiritual one in the marriage, or at least that's what I told myself. But underneath all of that was a lot of ignorance, pride, resentment, and honestly, deep disappointment, and a total misunderstanding of what God was actually asking me to do as a wife. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Natasha Drisdell. This is the Wise Wife podcast, and this is my story, the real one. Not a cleaned up version, not a highlight reel, but the actual story of how my marriage died, how God broke me completely, what he asked of me before he would bring any of it back. And that he did. So for today's episode, I am going to go from just a few bullet points because I wanted this to really be a genuine recounting of my story led by the Holy Spirit as it comes out, because I've told it many times. I want to start though by just clarifying this episode has the blessing of my husband. This is a really important part because I know that there are a lot of women out there sharing what they've learned in their marriage breakdown. And I caution anyone who does that because you want to help others with your story. It needs to be under the blessing of your husband. Okay? So I have the blessing of my husband. He's behind the scenes working in these episodes, and he absolutely has blessed this episode. And in fact, he wrote the foreword of my book. I did not write the book, The Wise Wife Blueprint, until he told me to. I actually kind of didn't want to write it. I was corporate America, building a luxury hotel brand, loving my life the way it was going. And God was like, you know what? You're going to take care of my people instead. Which I'm actually really glad that he did that. So that's a whole other story. But here we are with the blessing of my husband. Because I know I get the haters in the comments, all the men projecting their pain from being disrespected and dishonored and taking it out on me. So please don't, okay? He's very, very comfortable with this story and tells it all the time. We're going to get him on the podcast. If we get enough comments asking for him, he will come and he will share, and you will be really, really blessed by that, I promise you. So how did we meet? Let's start with that. We met in a band, and we live in Tennessee now. We're just outside of Nashville, and it was a really cool story for 20 years or so until we moved to Nashville. But once you move to Nashville, everyone meets in a band, so it's not really that cool of a story anymore. But in Canada, where we were living, it was pretty cool. That night when I met him, we basically spent hours talking. And I knew within maybe 20 minutes of talking to him that I was going to marry this guy, which was crazy. It was crazy. But I just really felt it. So we dated for about a year and a half before we got engaged, and we were engaged for 6 months. Solid Christian approach to marriage. And honestly, I think you should know within a year and a half if you want to marry someone. You should know. You should really know by then. And if I look back at where there are issues, where there, people always ask, like, did you see red flags? And if I look back at this, there were definitely issues. But the problem is that no one in the church equipped us for how to be a wife or a husband. And my parents were great, like role models in the sense that they were still together and they had a great relationship, but like how to communicate and how to not be codependent, like these were concepts that I just don't think were really thought of in the 80s. So that wasn't ever talked about. And I think ultimately there were issues that I overlooked, and it didn't mean that I wasn't supposed to be with him. It meant that there were things we didn't deal with that we should have dealt with. Like if I was coaching myself back then, as I know now, I would have said, hey, you shouldn't get engaged until these things have been addressed. And that would have saved me a lot of pain on the back end, right? I think like once you get married, there's less motivation to do the actual inner healing work that needs to happen. So instead, we just both brought all this baggage, and I say baggage, but like it was really just normal life stuff. Like everyone has a different upbringing. Some are better than others. But I've known from all the 15 plus years of mentoring wise wives, like you can think you had the most perfect, good little Christian family upbringing and end up being really jacked up. So it's really not necessarily just about what traumas were inflicted on you. It's so much more than that. Like we all have healing that we need to go through just as a person, regardless of even the external forces of our childhood and our family of origin. We have things we got to deal with just in us learning how to be sanctified and submitted to Christ. So I did not really know much about that. I had been a worship leader and youth leader, and we had small group that we led. And yet, to be fair, I was really self-righteous. I didn't really think I needed God. I wanted God, I will say that, but I didn't think that I needed him. That's a very dangerous place to be. And I think that I'm very glad that the Lord let my marriage implode, because had I continued on that path, I don't know if I would have gone to heaven, to be honest. Because as the world and life got harder, if I had just stayed with that shallow understanding of wanting God, but not truly understanding my need for him, that would not have turned out well for me, I don't think. So what happened next? We get married, and immediately, I am thinking, oh crap, what have I done? Not because Tim completely changed. I know there are women that deal with that. That's more dealing with like abusive marriages where things one way and then the moment you get married, they're flip a switch. It wasn't that. It was just that there was a lot of idolatry in marriage, in our relationship, like idolatry of marriage. So I think we both came into marriage thinking it was going to solve some issues or some unresolved things, and that does not happen. And so looking back, we have a lot of hindsight. So we didn't know any of this at the time, hence how we got ourselves into trouble. But at the time, he came in a survival mentality. Like he was a survivor. He had a really rough childhood, and He learned to survive. And so when he came into marriage, he just thought, oh, this is great. Like, you do you, I do me, and we just do it together separately. And of course, I'm the good little Christian girl. I'm like, oh, you're going to be my spiritual leader. You're going to pray for me. You're going to do Bible studies with me. You're going to make me a better Christian, basically, is what I was asking. But I came with my own expectations. He came with his, and they were both really wrong and both setting us up for complete disappointment. So he ended up feeling tons of pressure to be something that he didn't know how to be. And I felt tons of disappointment that he wasn't the man that I thought he should be. And in some ways, to be fair, he should have been, okay? So that's, if you've been here long enough, or if you plug into any of my content, you're going to know that I stand on righteousness, not cultural norms, not cultural expectations, and not churchy norms and churchy expectations. Righteousness. So yes, my husband should have been a better husband. Just want to make sure we're all clear. So I am not a Stepford wife. I'm not sitting here saying that I'm not that churchy lady that's like, oh, just give in and everything will be fine. Your husband is the leader of the home. And no, my husband is the leader of the home, but there are boundaries, there are consequences, and there are accountability that happen when a leader steps out of leadership, okay? So I am on the side of righteousness. And while there were things that he did wrong, I made the critical mistake of taking the enemy's bait and reacting and responding to those wrong things and those apparent weaknesses and lack with my own sin. So the more he failed me and my expectations, the more controlling I became, the more disappointed I became, the more condemning, and then the more reclusive he got because his survivor mentality was just run away from danger. And so we had a really toxic first, I'd say probably like the first 5 years of marriage. And then I had the boys, we had twins. For me, once the kids were involved, it was like a tipping point for me. And I went from having like hope that things could get better to just completely just conceding. Like I just gave in to the fact that this was my life. And I think the challenge here is that I grew up with the church environment, and you can see like I had hope that God was going to change my situation. You could read my journals from those years. I wanted to burn them. Tim was like, no, don't do that. It's part of who you were. It's so like the voice of reason. I'm like, burn them all. They're embarrassing when I read some of these journals. I was just like a whiny baby. I was just like, Lord, change him. And here, let me go on to this 3-page saga of how my husband's failed me and how hurt I am. Victim, 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 victim. And the crazy, like, unfortunate thing is that there was truth, an element of truth to everything that I was sharing with God. It's just that my heart posture was like, Lord, you're going to have to fix this kid of yours. Not, hey, Lord, what needs to change in me? Like, how can I be a counterpart, a perfect counterpart, a helper suitable to Tim? How can I be activated and used in order to see my husband change in these areas? But instead, it was all about me. It was like I needed to feel better. I needed to get what I wanted. And even though I know that a lot of the things I was asking for, God wanted for me too, it's like I'm asking for them in a way that was sinful. And he was like, daughter, I can't give you that if that's your heart posture. And that's what he did. He just held off. And there I ended up in a place of feeling completely disappointed in marriage. I remember going to bed by myself almost every night for the first year of our marriage because Tim played video games and I had no idea. I really didn't. Like, we didn't live together before we got married. Like, I knew he had played a video game, but I didn't know that it was his escape. I didn't know. And he would say now that it was a full-blown addiction, and he doesn't play video games anymore, praise God. That was one of the many things that the Lord healed when I finally got out of the way. But I had a lot of like hurt, It was like, okay, every night, there I am going to bed alone as a newlywed. Right. And he thought it was totally fine and acceptable. Okay. So I was really disappointed with marriage and ultimately just shut down. I call it the turtling. It's where, you've tried and tried and tried. You've tried everything you know. And then you just basically quit trying. And it's when I meet a wife who is dealing with that, it's actually really scary for me because someone who's reached that point, it's really hard to soften someone's heart that has already reached that point, but it's possible. It's totally possible. And the Lord has really given me an incredible privilege to speak in a way that I get that feedback all the time from women that say, like, I wouldn't listen to anyone else, but for some reason, I can't stop listening to you. Like, well, I'm so sorry that my voice is in your head that at all times. But it has brought freedom and breakthrough for them. And I just praise God for that gift that he's given me. But you don't want to get to that place like I was where you're so frustrated that you give up. And the reason why, it's not really about giving up on your marriage. Like, that's bad, but salvageable. Where it gets dangerous is when you give up on God. And that's what I had done. So I not only gave up on my marriage, but I was so disappointed that God had not shown up for me that I gave up on him. That is the devil's absolute MO, is to bring us to a place of apostasy. That's all he wants. He wants us to give up on God. And so a lot of times we're sitting there asking, praying, begging God to heal this, crying, sobbing, snot bubbles. And it's like, you would probably get a lot further if you could get over yourself and simply just ask, God, I know this breaks your heart. What needs to change in me? Like, what do I need to do in me? Because you are going to deal with your son, and I got to stop trying to deal with him. So, okay, I give up. I'm out. And at one point, about 7 years in our marriage, somewhere in the 7th year, I remember he came to me. At this point, I'm climbing the corporate ladder. I've gone back to work even though I didn't need to, because I wanted to, because my life is literally burning down all around me and I'm pretending like it's not. And so your body, like in your mind and your spirit, like everything knows that your life is horrible, but you find some kind of pressure release valve. And that's what I found in my career. So I knew that as I failed as a mother, I had a nanny raising my kids, didn't really want to be around them. I'd rather be at work. And so I definitely didn't want to be in my marriage. I couldn't even stand him at this point. Like, we were beyond roommates. And we never really fought, right? Because that's the problem, is like, everyone's like, oh, we're fighting all the time. So I would have enjoyed that, to be honest, because I'm someone who finds confrontation to be intimate, building intimacy. We have different personality types. So he's of the personality type that wants to keep the peace and is low conflict to a fault, right? Whereas I'm high conflict to a fault. And so I really did just by shutting down, I really like a part of me died, because who I'm built to be is like, no, let's do this. Let's wrestle this out. Let's find an answer. And when I gave up any desire to even care, I was off, just shut off. And I climbed that corporate ladder because it was easier to go to work and succeed there, where I knew I could be really successful. And I was, than to deal with the harder things that were burning down at home. And then at around that 7th year, in the 7th year, when this was all happening, Tim came to me and he said, actually, he came at me and I couldn't read his face. It was like I had never seen this man before. And in a lot of vulnerability and honestly courage, he came to me and he was begging. Like, I think he was crying, actually, which I had never seen him cry. Like, one tear on our wedding day, okay? And he really pleaded with me, saying, like, this is killing me. Like, I just need you. I don't even need you to love me, but I need you to at least like me. And he basically explained, like, this marriage is not good, and named it. I guess for the first time, we hadn't really had that conversation. We'd had lots of arguments and whatnot, but we'd never had a vulnerable conversation like that. And honestly, it was just too little too late for me with where my heart was at. I'd already shut down. And I didn't really have much to say to him. And because of that, I think that was like the nail in the coffin for him, because just to be that bold, like vulnerable and bold with me was that was a big ask. I was not exactly the easiest person to be vulnerable with. And so once he like got the courage up to be that vulnerable, and I didn't give him any good answer because I didn't care. I just was like, yeah, I don't care. Like, fix yourself. That's what I think I said. Sure. And I said, you just have to pray for me because like there's no hope. Like I actually knew, even though I'd walked away from the Lord, that like there was no hope. It was like going to need a miracle. And shortly after that, we went on a trip to Europe, just him and I. I find this happens a lot with separations, is like there's a catalyst and it seems like it should be a good thing, but it's not. And so we went to Europe, and while we were there, I was homesick, like at the hotel at our friend's house, sick. And our friend and Tim went out drinking. Again, I'm married to someone who says he's a Christian, but doesn't act like one. And they got drunk. The next thing Tim knows is there was a girl on the dance floor paying attention to him. And I'll leave it at that, but I want to say like how sad that is. And I deal with this with a lot of women who are just like me, where they're really hurt because their marriage was just like such a disappointment and your feelings are just like really, really wounded. And the sad part is their husbands also feel really wounded. And what's really sad to me is that's how it was described. And that's to this day, like that's how Tim would describe it. Like, she just paid attention to me. She made me feel like I was someone just on the dance floor. And it was like something flipped in him, because when you've spent so many years just feeling like a total failure, which, to be fair, he was. Like, I just want to be really clear. I'm not dumping on myself and I'm not dumping on him. We have both taken complete ownership of our stuff. But like, he was a failure of a husband. And then when I reacted to that by reinforcing the truth and not actually being there to cover him in any type of grace, I think you spend that many years and all it took was one floozy to be like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. And it like turned on that demonic agreement of like, I don't need to be with her. Someone else will treat me better. And so we got home and things were just as strained as they always were. I didn't even notice anything different, to be honest. And came home from work a couple weeks later to find that Tim had drank like half a bottle of scotch, was passed out in our living room. The nanny was downstairs with the kids. We had a living room upstairs and like a main area downstairs where the nanny was with the kids, and came home and she said that Tim was home, but that he'd asked her to stay on until I got home. Go up there and he's passed out, and he had been scrawling like notes. And I went and looked through the book of notes, and they were, first clear. And then as the pages went on and he got drunker and drunker, they got more and more vulnerable, more and more honest, and more scrawl. And it was in those notes that I found out that he had had an emotional affair with this woman that he met on the dance floor, that he was done accepting my scraps, and that it was over. And I was devastated. Here's the crazy thing. Why was I devastated? I should be relieved. Like, here's this guy that I can't stand. I don't want to be around. He hasn't been a good husband to me. I've certainly not been a good wife to him. He's giving me the out. He's being the bad guy. He's the one leaving. Like, this is my chance to just have a clear reputation and blah, blah, blah. And isn't this what my heart has wanted, since that's how I was behaving? But unfortunately, we often don't know what we have until it's being taken away from us. And in that moment, I think all of my hard-heartedness was confronting me. Like, oh, your rubber just hit the road. Is that what you really want? Like how you've been behaving, how you've been acting, not wanting to be married. Now's your chance to prove that's what you actually wanted. And I found that it wasn't what I wanted. And there was a part of me that died that day. And I think it was not all bad. But I think a lot of it was just this unmet expectation and self-righteousness and entitlement that just died. And I just had this like come to Jesus moment of, wait, what am I doing? And so once he sobered up, we had a conversation and he was serious. He meant what he said. And I didn't really have a leg to stand on, to be honest, because he had felt like he had tried. And honestly, for him to have actually made the decision, he felt like it was too little too late for me to come now and say, no, I really want to work on this. And so he moved out. That's part one. We left off at the moment everything broke open. Tim had moved out, and I was standing in the wreckage of a marriage that I had helped destroy, whether I wanted to admit that or not. And in part two, I'm going to tell you what God did with that year of separation, what he asked of me before anything changed, and what obedience actually cost me. I'll see you there.